Hello everyone and welcome to episode 18 of the WCW 2000 save here on TEW IX. It's the build up to Spring Stampede. We've got 2 shows to go and then it's pay-per-view time. So we're just going to get right into Nitro. Now first things first, I just want to say a little heads up. I am pretty busy over the next couple of weeks, so I am going to try and record as many videos as possible. So apologies if I have not dealt with anything that you guys commented since these videos go up. This is the 25th of August, and I think this is due to go live on the Friday this week, and then I'm going to record the pay-per-view which comes out next Tuesday, and then maybe one more over the next couple of days. So I am going to be a week and a half ahead of the videos coming out. I will obviously reply to your comments and all those things on the comment section, that's fine. But if you want to see anything or anything you've got thoughts about, I'm not ignoring you, just to let you know that we are a bit ahead. It's going to be the same for the local to global as well, which I think I've already made that disclaimer, but I'll put another one out in the next episode as well. Anyway, we're going to open the show with technically not Hogan, but we're opening the show with Mean Gene, who's with Sid in the ring, and Sid comes down and says last week was a glorious week for him. He got himself into the title match, he destroyed Sting, he destroyed Hogan, and he wants more tonight. Sting comes down to the top of the ramp and says he'd love to have that fight tonight. It isn't wise to get into it just before the pay-per-view, but before they can continue, they're interrupted by Hogan, Flair, Piper and Package, who suggest that tonight, how about Sting and C-Dup team up as the losers as they are and take on Flair and Piper in tonight's main event. Sting calls Hogan a coward for not putting himself in the match, but he accepts, as does Sid, and tonight's main event is set. It only gets a really disappointing 47. Sid was terrible as well, which is unfortunate, and I think it's because the segment went on too long. I think this was like 12 minutes. Yeah, 12 minutes long. I ummed and ahed about the length for this, and I have made the wrong decision. Oh well. It's fine, a 47 is not the end of the world. We then do follow up a slightly better promo as Mean Gene is then backstage, because, adverts, commercials. And he's with the Outsiders, and Scott Hall says he's starting to feel a lot better, and he'll be good for the pay-per-view, but tonight, Nash says it's all about revenge. Booker T tried to be a smart ass last week challenging Hall, and look what's getting him. A beatdown from Big Sexy. 53 overall, good stuff from the Outsiders. Continues the trajectory of the feud towards the pay-per-view. We then have another interview with Mean Gene because, wrestling is overrated. And Dustin Rhodes said it's going to be a tough week, but it's what he signed up for. He knew Canyon would be up to tricks if he made the challenge, but tonight, it's all about beating whichever Harris brother he's facing. And the answer to that is Don Harris. Apparently. He beats Don in 8 minutes with the curtain call, easy peasy win for Dustin Rhodes. It's not a great match of 45, but we can build upon it, so it's fine. So Dustin is 1 match away from the TV title match at Spring Stampede. Up next, look who it is. Eric Bischoff walks down to make his return to WCW and says from what he's seen on the outside looking in, it's like the inmates have started to run the asylum again, and that ends now. Bischoff says it's time for Law & Order to return here in WCW, but refuses to elaborate on what that actually means and just sort of leaves. Now, Bischoff is back from his absence, and I figured we might as well use him because we're paying him a lot of money for however long his contract is. So we might as well use him. I have a plan. I've already booked the angle as well for it, so there's a plan for Bischoff, don't worry. He's kind of in charge because he's the boss, but you'll see what I'm going to do soon enough. Not this episode, it will be on Tuesdays when we do the pay-per-view. Up next, Berlin is mid-promo backstage when he runs into his old rivals, the Filthy Animals, with Tori of course now. Tori says that before, Berlin may have won thanks to help from the Wall, but how about Spring Stampede? He puts that belt on the line one more time against Kidman. Berlin says he has nothing to prove and then walks away. Essentially, Tori coming in, thrusting Kidman into the match, potentially some dissension between Kidman and Ray, because obviously this is Kidman's girlfriend Tori, so the seeds have been sown. We'll obviously come back to this at some point, don't worry. 34 is not great, but it's fine. We do thankfully manage to bring the next match up a little bit. Sabu defeats Johnny the Bull to make defense number 7 of the hardcore title. He gets a 42, Johnny the Bull gets a 17, and they don't click, so that's just a bit of a disaster all around. But it's fine, because with next on Thunder there's an angle, and then the pay-per-view there's a match, so we'll be hopefully alright. Hopefully the pay-per-view match will be better. Then we have the Cat. He tells me and June that Cat Associates are on a roll, allegedly. Because, you know, it's 8s and 15s are a roll, apparently. And that on Thunder, they want a match against an established tag team to show further proof that when you're with the Cat, you're alright. I don't know what I typed that for. I think it's to try and make a catchphrase. It's not very good, is it? Gets a 24. Segment's bad as well. The Cat thing's a dud, but as you saw with the Hacksaw stuff, I am not letting it go. I will get these men over. And then, thankfully, we bring the crowd back with a good match as DDP beats Meng with the Diamond Cutter. DDP with a great performance of 61, which is also what the match gets. And afterwards, he grabs a microphone and says, "Jeff Jarrett, get out here, I've got a surprise for you." Jarrett says he doesn't have all day, he's waiting for a surprise, but DDP tells him, "Don't worry, look up," as a steel cage starts to lower down. DDP says it's time to settle this as men, one-on-one, with no outside shenanigans. Jarrett's looking a bit visibly worried by the announcement of the steel cage. So yes, we're going to do a steel cage match between Jarrett and DDP at the pay-per-view. I've not built this up super great towards a cage match, but it's WCW, we need some kind of stipulation on the pay-per-view. 65 is really good though. Then a 60 is really good here, despite Vampiro being off his game. Scott Steiner beats Vampiro with the Steiner recliner in a 60 rated match. And afterwards, once again, refuses to let go of the recliner immediately, gets a mic, calls out Benoit, reapplies the Steiner recliner, and then Benoit runs down with a chair, swinging wildly as Steiner makes the escape, laughing that he's got under Benoit's skin once again. 64. So far, this show's doing okay. And it's still doing okay, as we get a 62 when Kevin Nash defeats Booker T with the jackknife following interference from Scott Hall. So Scott Hall just, causes a scene. It allows Nash to hit the jackknife, but afterwards, Malenko and Saturn run down, take him out at the knees, take Nash out at the knees, that is. Scott Hall tries to get involved, but he's obviously still injured. The numbers game are too strong for the outsiders as the Revolution leave their mark. T. Don't know what that's there for. Good angle. 51's pretty good for an angle involving Malenko and Saturn. And then in our main event, we get a very good rating, so hopefully this means the show's going to be pretty good. Sid Vicious and Sting do defeat Ric Flair and Roddy Piper when Sid Vicious pins Roddy Piper with the powerbomb. Piper the weak link, Flair off his game, Flair also penalised, but crucially, Sid did not phone in his performance. And he gets a 66. And then the post-show angle gets a 55, which is okay. After the win, Sid and Sting go face to face. They're about to exchange blows when Piper, Flair, Package and Hogan attack. The four of them lay a beatdown on their challengers, and Hogan stands tall with the title to end the show. It's a 65, so that's about break-even level. I will take that after some of the shows that we've had recently. I think this is the most consistent show that I've booked in a while. I feel like I tend to book better shows when I have just done a recording recently, because I'm more aware of what's actually going on. I have a bit of a habit of waiting a week or two between doing this, and then I'm like not got a clue what's going on anymore. So yeah, good. I'm hoping this week's Thunder's going to be better as well. I'm optimistic about Thunder. It's the go home show before Spring Stampede, so I do have some hopefully decent stuff on it, but we'll see. Chameleon, she's leaving. Scott Hall was back from injury. Eric hates Perry Saturn. Jeff hates the wall. Overuse, and then we've got a bunch of guys feeling effects of the grueling recent schedule. Our schedule isn't really that busy. Like, house shows, do we take a day? Do you think we should take a day off? So we tape on a Monday and a Tuesday. I wonder if we take the Wednesday off. Yeah, do Thursday, Friday. Yeah, let's do that. There you go. Have a day off the house shows, guys. Make sure that's definitely saved. It has. Okay, that's better. I did a few little things, by the way, off camera. I talked about the developmental before. I went through and I did a bunch of relationship things just to try and expand our worldwide reach of companies. I tried to set up a second developmental, but it wouldn't let me, even though I'm pretty sure I've sent people to companies before on this game, like multiple companies, but it is what it is. Anyway, I'll be back in a second and we shall do Thunder. And Thunder is live, and we open with Mean Gene again and Sting, who's asked his thoughts on the main event at Spring Stampede. Sting says this is going to be one of the toughest matches of his career. Hogan's Hogan, but Sid is the real question mark. He's a loose cannon, he's crazy, and that makes things very unpredictable. 58, pretty good for Sting actually. Sting tends to not do very well in promos, so we'll take that. We then immediately kill the crowd. Sabu is about to make his way to the ring for a match when he's jumped by the Mamelukes backstage. They beat him up, throw him through a bunch of tables and say that at Spring Stampede one of them is walking away with the hardcore title, as it will be a triple threat match. Now, this was initially a 2-on-1 handicap match tonight on Thunder that the Mamelukes were going to win, and then the three-way was going to be at this pay-per-view. However, Sabu was extremely pissed about losing this match for some reason. And also, the other issue we had is that our ratios were off, so I just made it into an angle match to the pay-per-view anyway, so it's fine. We then have a pretty good match, a 52 overall, as Brian Clark defeats Norman Smiley with the meltdown. Clark and Norman Smiley have great chemistry. Well, good chemistry. So that's surprising. Good match. Norman Smiley is not done, by the way. I still have plans for Smiley and for Hacksaw, don't worry. But this is all about the next segment where Brian Clark is asked by Mean Gene. Well, Mean Gene says, like, Brian Clark, you asked for this interview time, what do you want to say? And Clark says he has some good news and some bad news. The good news is that his partner Brian Adams is nearly medically cleared to compete. Mean Gene says, so what's the bad news? The bad news is that Chronic are back, and they've put everyone in WCW on notice. Bad segment, but it's just a necessary evil to get to where we want to get to. But yes, Chronic are back. Brian Adams is back as early as the pay-per-view on Sunday. So I never thought I'd be excited about Brian Adams being back in wrestling, but here we are. Chronic's back though, so that's always fun. We then have a rotten match. Dustin Rhodes beats Ron Harris easily and wins. Let's just move on. The crowd hated it. The crowd doesn't hate this as much though, which is good. So, immediately after the win and confirming his title shot at Spring Stampede, Kanyon jumps the ring and hits Dustin with the TV title. A 3-on-1 beatdown commences before Benoit runs down to make the save and chase them away, as Kanyon gloats that he'll never lose this title. Benoit was a real star in the segment and dragged it up, Benoit saving his friend Dustin Rhodes, of course. We then have a match that is, I would say, better than expected. A 48 as the Filthy Animals defeat Cat Associates when Ray pins Mark Jindrak with the Super Hurricane Rana. Considering Jindrak was slowed by injury, Palumbo was off his game, and these guys absolutely stink at the moment. A 48 is pretty good. And it does lead into this next segment where Berlin and the Wall then come down and take out the Animals. Berlin grabs the mic and instructs the Wall to chokeslam Kidman through a table and says he's had a sleep on it and he accepts the challenge for Spring Stampede. So it will be Berlin versus Billy Kidman for the Cruiserweight Championship. And then in our pre-main event segment, so we're needing the main event to do some heavy lifting here for the overall score. That's all I'm going to say. I think this has been a decent show so far. But obviously you've got to have it in with the way of TEW rating and how the game works. Obviously I'm not booking people who are particularly over, but whatever, who cares. But Jarrett and Steiner jump DDP backstage and launch an assault to injure him, with Jarrett repeatedly shouting at him that when they get in the cage it's all over for the old man. And which does lead to our main event, which was scheduled to be a tag team match, and it still kind of is, where the NWO 2000 of Jeff Jarrett and Scott Steiner defeat Diamond Dallas Page and Chris Benoit when Scott Steiner submits Chris Benoit with the Steiner recliner DDP came in midway through the match because obviously he's been attacked backstage. Benoit was great, Jarrett was not. Jarrett, true unprofessionalism, and obviously they have no chemistry as partners, but that's a necessary evil to put up with for certain matches at the moment. But a 65 is pretty good. I'm hoping that brings the show average up. It doesn't, it's a 60, for God's sake. Thunder, I hate you so much. What do we have to do for Thunder to be a good show? Is it because we put DDP midway, but then maybe the rest of the stuff wasn't good enough? But a 60, come on. Come on. We did better than a 60. That was a decent show. I thought that was a decent show. I'm going to have a look at it again and see what we did. I mean, look at this. I think that's perfectly decent as a show. I think a 60 is harsh. Again, ignore the pre-show matches. It's just chucking guys into big tag matches to keep them happy. But yeah. We do need to keep an eye on this though, on the fatigue issue. Because I noticed it in the pre-booking as well. Now, I am thinking, is it the house shows? Do we just do one a week? Like every Thursday or every Friday, give them 2 days off, give them a day off, pay-per-view. Yeah, let's do house shows 1 day a week. I don't know if that helps money-wise either. Let me know. And actually, you know what, let's have a look while we're here. We'll look together. So house shows, they're primarily financial, little in the way of expenditure. So yeah, we'll just do one a week for now. We need to keep the fatigue up for some of the guys because we can't have them being absolutely wrecked. Like, yeah, he's somewhat fatigued. Okay, let's keep the house shows to a minimum just now, and sort of go for there. But yeah, that was Thunder. I thought that was a better show than last week by a point. I thought last week's show actually sucked. I thought this week's show was pretty decent, but it is what it is, isn't it? Nitro was good at least. Nitro was actually really solid overall. So I'm hoping that Spring Stampede's going to be a good show. Now, match-wise, if you bear with me 2 seconds. Okay, I was just taking the page off the screen so you don't see any spoiler notes, because I have a couple spoilery notes here. Now, currently, the card for Spring Stampede is as follows. It will be Berlin defending the Cruiserweight title against Billy Kidman. Chris Benoit defends the United States title against Scott Steiner. Diamond Dallas Page and Jeff Jarrett meet in a steel cage. Dustin Rhodes takes on Chris Kanyon for the TV title. Sabu defends the Hardcore title against Johnny the Bull and Big Vito. The Revolution of Dean Malenko and Perry Saturn take on the Outsiders, the NWO of Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. And in our main event, Sting defends the World Heavyweight title against Hulk Hogan and Sid Vicious. And possibly another match or two. I might do the WCW classic of just chucking any old garbage on to open the show, depending on what the time's looking like. But that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. Drop a like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And I'll see you guys next week for Spring Stampede. It's hopefully going to be a good one, because our last pay-per-view was really good. So if we can get above a 76, I'll be over the moon. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and take care and goodbye.